Get in! Come on! As you can see, guys, I am an happy man because Sunderland have just got themselves 3 points on the opening game of the season with a 2-0 win against Cardiff. It was a very, very nervy second half. The majority of it was very, very nervy. But Clarke managed to seal the deal late on in typical Clarke fashion to give us all 3 points. And I don't know whether I've read this correctly, but I believe that was the first time we have won an opening game of the season in the top 2 tiers since 2009. I could have read that completely wrong, but that feels like a wrong stat, but I wouldn't question it either. Could be totally wrong there. But either way, we'll get into the review. So we did start off relatively, well, pretty much as I expected us, pretty much unchanged from the game against Marseille, the last pre-season game before this one, obviously. So we had Pato in goal, we had Sirkin, Alessi, O'Nien and Hume across the back. We had Dhannoo captaining the side for the first time. It was announced yesterday that he's going to be the team captain. Luke O'Nien is the club captain. And then there's a sort of small group, of like a leadership group, which we have had before, so it isn't totally new. But it was brilliant to see Dhannoo leading the line with the captain's armband. It was a really, really nice sight, you know, with just to have a sort of a homegrown talent, someone like Dhannoo, the long sleeve Hummel shirt with the captain's armband. It was a special sight. It was a beautiful sight. It was a sight to behold, and I was really happy to see that. Then he was partnered with Alan Brown in the middle. Then in front of them, they had Job, they had Paddy Roberts on the right-hand side, Clarke on the left, and then Mayenda up top. So yeah, a side, an 11 that I totally expected. Now, getting into the game, Cardiff, I think they dominated the opening 5 minutes, and they had a very aggressive, high-tempo press, as we actually had against Marseille. But I feel like we had our foot off the gas from the off. We seemed a little bit slow to get into the game. We didn't look quite on the ball. We didn't look quite sharp enough. Where they were right in our faces, and they were forcing us into errors. We couldn't string a pass together. You had Tanner on the right hand side who had a couple of decent crosses into the box. I think one was met, and it was a decent save by Pato. And they were really putting us under pressure. But that seemed to ease very, very quickly. After about 5-6 minutes, they kind of put the foot off the gas a little bit, and then they allowed us possession, and they were pushing back, and they were sitting deeper and deeper, and then we were making chances of our own. Mayenda, you know, to be fair, I mean, I'm going to sound like I'm slating him throughout the video a little bit, but I think that's because we're scraping the barrel for compliments for strikers at the minute, because I think he's definitely the best of a bad bunch, in my opinion, which sounds like it's been unfair. He is only a young lad. He's been put in a position maybe unfairly. I don't think he should be anywhere near the starting 11, but he's been thrown into it, and he's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders. And I think the only compliment you can kind of give him is that he gets a lot more involved than the other strikers that we have. And if that's the only thing we can attach to a striker, you know, then we're going to be saying this until the end of the window. We definitely need something else, because if the only compliment I can give is he gets involved, you know, it doesn't make for good viewing. But like I said, he was getting involved. He got the ball on the right hand side, cut inside onto his left, and it's not like he was under loads of pressure, but every time he hits the ball, strikes it, it's like he's falling over into the ball. It's like Bambi on ice. Strikes it with his left foot, and it nearly hits the corner flag, and it's a really good chance as well. I'm thinking, oh shit, one of those days. But we're still putting them under pressure. Then we do get ourselves a free kick, and before that, you know, Paddy Roberts, he looked like the Paddy Roberts of old. You know, he was really up for it. He looked like he was really up for it. You know, he was cutting in from right to left, putting great dangerous balls into the box. But we do get this free kick, as I say. He whips a ball into the back post. Dennis Sirkin totally free, rises above the rest. And I've said this before, he scored in the game against Marseille. He's got a great leap on the lad, but he was totally free at the back post. He nods it back across goal, and there is Mr. Sunderland. There is Smiler to meet the second ball, to head it into what was basically an empty net to make it 1-0. Brilliant, absolutely fantastic. And we didn't really let up there either. We're still making little half chances here and there. You know, Clarke was getting down to the byline, the crosses just weren't quite meeting players. And I actually thought, you know, Alan Brown, for me, he was absolutely outstanding. Now, I'm going to say with Job here, and again, it sounds like I'm always digging about, he had two separate halves for me, Job, because there were times where I just felt like I needed him to bring himself into the game, where everyone else was sort of busting the guts to get into the game. Again, it was one of the same complaints I make about Joe. He was kind of wandering a little bit. He was making some very good interceptions, but we like to see him press further forward, get himself involved in the game and push us forward. Because when he does decide to do that, which is actually quite rarely, he's very, very good and he's very dangerous. But I found like there was a couple of times, and for one example, Dennis Sirkin, he was driving down the left-hand side, took on one player, took on another, then he megged another player, and he could have continued to go. But then Job just got in his way, pretty much nicked the ball off Sirkin, stopped all momentum, then went backwards and took us back to our defence. And I thought, what the fuck are you doing? Do you know what I mean? It was just, why? Like, there was a couple of times where we were driving forward, give it into him, and then he just turned back, and there was obvious passes, like, Brown would sit in the hole where Job was, if Job picked it up deep, or Robertson move across, and it was an easy pass to make, but he was just so hell-bent and going backwards, and he was killing momentum. But like I said, it wasn't like he was constantly losing the ball or anything like that. It was just the sort of choice making of Job at times was, I thought it was quite poor in the second half. But as I say, there were some good interceptions, some good tackles, but getting forward is what we want to see more of Job, and we'll get into that in the second half. But we do see it out in the first half, and the second half is underway. And I'd be lying if I said that Cardiff didn't dominate for large periods. We had to sit back and absorb a lot of pressure. The Cardiff crowd were really getting behind them and getting on side for them. And they were just putting ball after ball and cross after cross into our box. There were several times where there were shouts for penalties. I think it was just out of pure desperation at times. Luke O'Nien was really having a good battle with Robinson up top. And there was a handful of times where you could maybe argue he could have claimed for something, but I just think because Robinson went down so many times prior to anything that would look like half chance for a penalty, because he'd already gone down so softly so many times, the ref just wasn't having any of it. Because every time Luke is gonna feel you, he's gonna put his arm on you, and that is what you do. It's a contact sport. But every time Luke went anywhere near Robinson, and even there was probably times where if he stayed on his feet, he would have been 1-on-1 with the keeper, but he'd fling himself to the ground. And it was pathetic, but there were a couple of times, maybe later on, where he did have his arm around him a little bit too much in the box, and I think the ref just thought, I'm not taking any more of your shit, because Robinson was flinging himself around like a rag doll. But either way, yeah, they brought on the big lad up top. Was it Maita? I forget his name. They brought on a big lad up top, and or at least he was throwing himself up top, for set pieces and what have you, and it was causing a bit of chaos. He was winning headers, but wasn't really testing Pato, and we were sitting back a lot, and we did have to play on the counter-attack. Now, we did have one brilliant counter-attack where Job does brilliantly well. Like I said, he was a different player in the second half. And when he did get forward a handful of times, he looked fantastic. It's just something he just didn't do as much in the first half. But he was cutting passing lanes, and then he was driving us forward. And he did on the counter-attack. He found Mayenda brilliantly just outside the foot, finds Menda. Menda's 1-on-1 with the keeper, and again, under literally zero pressure. It's almost like he's falling over into the ball, and he just hits it straight at the keeper's legs. A good save for the keeper. But for a striker, regardless of age, and I know people might say I'm being harsh at him, you need to work, but you need to do better than that. Miles better than that. That should have been it. That should have been 2-0, dead and buried at that point. But that was that. And then again, they start piling more pressure on us. Tanner's whipping balls in the box. And I think Hume was doing outstanding on his side. Dowd was getting at him, amongst others as well, who were really getting at him. But Hume was doing some outstanding challenges, as you would expect. They had a couple of set pieces around the edge of the box, which we managed to block and defend. So defensively, we did very, very well in the game. I think last year, I'm not going to read too much into it because it's only the first game of the season, but there's plenty of opportunities that I think last season we probably would have conceded with sloppiness, but we stayed strong at the back. And then eventually we do break. Job, outstanding, nicks the ball off him, breaks forward, does really, really well. He's committing plays, getting at them, which is, again, what I want to see. When you have that big 6'2" figure of Job running at you and galloping at you, it's hard to deal with. It's just we don't see it enough sometimes. Or at least I just think, you need to gamble on a pass or gamble at breaking into the space rather than simply killing momentum and going backwards, as I say. But he broke forward, did brilliantly well, plays in Clarke, and it was just inevitable. It was so obvious what he was going to do. But as I say so many times, and I said it a million times last season, it's as predictable as Clarke can be. If you're that good at doing the said predictable thing, you can't defend against it. Gets it to Clarke on the left-hand side, cuts in on his right, and just buries it in the bottom right-hand corner for 2-0. And that just ends the game, dead and buried, buzzing, clean sheet, class start to the season. A lot to work with there, a lot of positives, a few little negatives here and there. I thought Dhannoo didn't have the greatest of games, despite him looking fantastic in the captain's armband. And Brown was just so good. Brown, every time he got the ball, so positive, driving us forward. Dhannoo, you'd expect him, is somebody who's usually so good in possession. There were quite a lot of times where it just slipped under his feet, or a few misplaced passes here and there, as I say. But we got away with it, and some players will have off games here and there. It was good to see Paddy Roberts, again, as I say, he was so up for it. Rigg came on later on in the game, as did Rusin, chased the ball down a little bit. But yeah, like I said, and this is what we're going to say until we actually get one, with a proper striker, and with someone with a bit more experience up top, we could have run away with that. Given that we still defend as well as we did, that could have been a higher scoreline, and we would have lost. Someone who we have an outlet. So if we do find ourselves under pressure, because Cardiff did have us back, pressed back quite a lot, and we end up forcing ourselves into hoofing the ball, someone who can hold it for us, something to a focal point to hold on to, and then bring us up the field. That would have been ideal, but we didn't really have that. But either way, fantastic 3 points. My man of the match for me. It could go to a handful of players, to be fair, but I'm going to go with Brown. I thought Brown was just excellent. I really, really enjoyed watching the lad. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. Every time he got the ball, it was driving us forward, very positive, nicking in to nick the ball off him. And, it was all the gaps, he was gambling to make those runs into. He wasn't always giving the ball, but he was just so positive. And yeah, I really, really like the look of Brown. I wish we got him 2 or 3 years ago, so we'd have him for longer, if this is what we're going to see from him. And I thought he was outstanding. Niche choice there, but I think he was great. But either way, guys, who was your man of the match? What did you think of the game? Do you agree with me? Do you not agree with me? Respectfully comment in the comments down below. But if you've enjoyed, smash the like button for me. It'd be massively appreciated. And subscribe if you're not already. But for now, take care. Stay jammy.